Hi, everyone. My name is Aliza Caplan. I'm the Director of Strategic Accounts with VIM. I am joined here today by Kate Bornschein, who's a Senior Product Manager with Aledade. And we are excited to be here today to talk about how our organizations have partnered and worked together to deploy VIM's point of care solutions at Aledade's provider practices over the past year or so. Aledade is a physician-led primary care ACO and has hundreds of practices responsible for nearly 1.7 million patients across 37 states. Wow, that's a mouthful and lots of numbers there. Aledade has been using VIM's application to surface diagnosis gaps to their partner practices, which helps to improve risk adjustment accuracy and diagnosis capture. So Kate and I have been working together to lead the operations for both of our teams, and we wanted to talk to you today about how Aledade and VIM have worked together to deploy technology, what we've learned, what's worked well, and the importance of being aligned in our goals. So before we dive into the details, Kate, I'd love to give you the opportunity to share a little bit more about your background, what you've been up to, how you got to Aledade, and what your kind of function within Aledade is responsible for.
Yeah, absolutely. Bit of a story, I suppose. In the industry, I've had about 10 years of experience. So I've been with Aledade for 3 years in a senior product manager capacity. And prior to that, I was also a senior product manager at enablement. And in that role, I was managing the prospective risk adjustment solutions for payer clients. But as far as like the history, how I even got here, like why healthcare and how I ended up in this particular role in Aledade, I think it's just from a lifetime of just having exposure to healthcare in different aspects. And going way back, my mother was an OBGYN nurse working in the healthcare system. Now she's retired, but she would work in large hospitals, and she'd come home and talk about her day and just talk about the difficulties that she might have faced, the challenges beyond just the hard work of being a nurse and servicing your patients. And I've had a bunch of positions prior to enablement and Aledade working in the healthcare space. And I just got exposed to a lot of the nuances of all different aspects of healthcare, health systems, large hospitals, small private practices, transitioning from paper to electronic. I'm that old. And also just understanding a lot about the nuances of policy, program, claim submission. It's become apparent over that time that the system is pretty broken and that the people that suffer the most really are the patients. And I just wanted to join an organization where I could apply all that I've been exposed to and all that I've learned and try and help and make it better. And I feel like in today's world, it feels like there's no better place for me in my experience and background to do that other than product management, and particularly with healthcare technology and softwares that can assist our practices, assist our primary care physicians, and also assisting our patients.
I'd love to hear a little bit about how Aledade, who is obviously really admired as a company in the industry and has scaled to over 1,000 practices with primary care. We know that technology is obviously a really important aspect here. I'd like to hear about how Aledade thinks about technology, how they assess tech partners and understand, okay, what are the needs and what do we want to really invest in as a tech company?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's important to start by orienting on what our goals are, and then where tech and partnering with others in this industry is really helpful and meaningful for us in our bottom line. Primarily we're trying to meet our practitioners where they are. We feel there's no greater relationship in the healthcare space than that of the patient and their primary care physician. So we're most focused on trying to make it easy to connect those two individuals, and then also make sure that there's the most value in that relationship as possible. So I feel those that are in the industry that are aware, we know that our doctors are dealing with so many different systems, so many apps, it's hard to just rely on your EHR, even when you have a really good EHR. Even that's not enough. There's just too much data fragmentation, and there's just there's no silver bullet. Um, and what we provide that's unique at Aledade is a host of insights that are not available in your EHR, but we realize that even though our practitioners find that really valuable, it's hard for them to work in another system into their workflow. So what we really wanted to do was make sure we can provide those valuable insights that lead to the value-based care, that lead to the reduced costs in a way that's easy for the practitioners to see, be able to interact with, action, and be able to give that good value care to their patients. In terms of partnerships, what's really, I think, important for Aledade, and what was a huge standout with Vim and starting this relationship, this partnership, was the transparency. And just, I think, being aware early on that you would be thought partners with us and you wouldn't just be a service provider. I think we built a lot of trust in that relationship early on. We can see that the team was really willing to grow and learn with us. You all showed real curiosity, which is super important and a top value here at Aledade. And you wanted to know what we were working on and what our goals were, and tried to understand how you best could support us in meeting our goals alongside us, which was really meaningful. And I noticed that we all had like-minded cultures, both organizations, both of them, both Aledade. I can tell the team members that work are really dedicated to regular improvement and just constantly thinking about ways to, be better today together. And we're both invested in that. And those were core values that meant a lot to Aledade.
I couldn't agree more. I think it's been really awesome to work with in a partnership that we are both trying to make each other better and understand what are your unique goals, what are our unique goals, and how can we help to contribute to each of them. On that note, we know that Aledade has a very special relationship with your practices. You have a dedicated field team who is in close contact with your clinics. And at the same time, we know that Vim also has a field operations team who helps with implementation and deployment of the technology. What do you see as reasons for our successes as we've been deploying the technology together to the field?
Yeah. I think it's a good part that occurred behind the scenes, making the soup, the secret sauce that not everybody gets to see. There was a good amount of great work that was done there and stand out. And then, of course, what we've been able to deliver and provide for our practices. So I guess I'll start with a bit of the behind the scenes. It was apparent that your team was really enthusiastic and practically matched Aledade's enthusiasm, which I feel like is really hard to find in a partner, because we are some very enthusiastic, motivated folks. So just launching and being able to do that efficiently with high quality is huge. Time is everything in healthcare, and our practitioners don't have time to wait. Our practices don't have time to wait for solutions to be developed a year or 2 years from now. They need help today. They needed help yesterday. So that was tremendous in supporting our practices out and our field teams, for sure. And then post-launch, putting that product out into production was huge. So working on surfacing Aledade's diagnosis suggestions, getting them into an overlay in their EHRs has been tremendously delightful for our practitioners. Like I was talking about earlier, they're faced with so many different systems, and they just want something that's simple, something that is easy for them to adopt, something that fits into their regular workflow. So partnering to have that amount of Aledade insight available in that workflow when they're already seeing their patient, and something that's very native and natural to them, has really been a huge time saver, and just makes some of the not so difficult work perhaps, but maybe just time consuming work a lot easier for them. And it's one less thing that our practitioners, our practices have to think about in their day. one less task that they have to check off, and they can really focus on what's meaningful, like having that conversation with the patient instead of worrying about all the documentation that needs to go into the chart. So those things together, I think being able to continuously deliver and support our practices with the solutions that are important for them quickly, and then also giving them some efficiency gains has been tremendous.
Yeah, I really agree there. I also want to call out the fact that I think our teams have done a really tremendous job of kind of thinking outside of the box of like a traditional operational model and working with an account. Usually, there's emails that have to be going back and forth, and instead of emails, we instituted the shared Slack channel across our organizations, which I think has been huge in helping us to address problems immediately, giving transparency so that everyone on both of the teams are aware of, some of the challenges that are arising, and we're able to address those right away. Having multiple different weekly meetings between our teams with different functions, so that, both teams are aligned and the proper team members are aware of what's going on. I think some of those things have also been really helpful in our partnership.
Yeah, for sure. It's a great call out too. Like you're saying with Slack, that shared channel, somebody responds in a few minutes. It's so much easier to collaborate and to meet our practices needs and make sure that we're on the same page. And I do love those weekly meetings, and our Aledade team does as well. They're meaningful, which is important, because I feel there's a lot of times when you can just put meetings on the calendar to put meetings on the calendar, but this is us making sure like we're in lockstep with each other, that both of our practice engagement teams are communicating, are aware of how they're supporting the Aledade practices. And, it's like a nice fluid dance, I think, between the different teams. And it's more than just handshakes, I think, like a stream of great work that's constantly being passed between the right team members to get it done in like super efficient ways, which is really nice, quick communication and turnarounds.
What are some of the biggest challenges that Aledade has encountered in deploying technology? And what are some of the lessons learned that you have, taken into account, and learned from your experience in rolling out tech?
Yeah, great questions. First and foremost, I think we want to make sure that any tech that we're evaluating is secure. We're all dealing with so much PHI. It's like number one priority is that we have the right security in place and compliance. And then past that, when you're just thinking about the tech and what it's doing, we do stay mindful to solutions that aren't necessarily over engineered, that are focused and that are serving their intent very well. And that's something that stood out with Vim, is that the tech is easy to integrate with, isn't overly complicated unnecessarily. It does its job. It serves our data and gets it into the workflow well, reliably. We know it's secure. We have strong patient matching. We've got great identifiers, simple identifiers, agreed upon identifiers that we're using to make sure that it continues to remain high quality and secure. And of course, reliability is huge. Is the tech has to be reliable. Otherwise, it's not really as valuable as anybody may think it is if it's not reliable, and our users can't know that every day when they're logging in or signing in or doing their work, that this is going to be available to them and it's going to work, and it's going to work correctly. So in addition to security, reliability, dependability, it's also really important to us that the implementation is flexible and is scalable. And I think having done that together over API was a great solution. Again, not over engineered, does what it needs to do, but also gives us flexibility to grow, to scale, and to think about other opportunities without it being too complex or having to go back to the drawing board and wipe it clean. So those things together end up being the most valuable things that we evaluate when we're thinking about new tech.
How important is user feedback in your technology? Do you tend to do you interview your providers before you deploy a solution broadly to get like a sense for how they might feel about this, if it we know that each provider practice operates in such different ways, which can be challenging because when you roll out a solution, it might be really helpful for one practice, but another practice might say, oh, this doesn't really fit with our workflow. So how do you think about that or balance user feedback in the
Yeah.
field?
Yeah. User feedback is tremendously important to Aledade, and I think it goes in line with our desire to just constantly be better. So we want to know where we could improve, and we want to hear that from the most important person, the user. We want to hear from them. How does this serve you? Does it meet your workflow? Is it not meeting your workflow? What do you like about it? What don't you like about it? What do you wish it had? What do you wish it didn't have? And then we try our best to aggregate all of that feedback, knowing that there are very different practices, different styles, different workflows, different goals, working in a whole bunch of different systems. And we really synthesize out what are the underlying themes that we're hearing. And we'll do that through our design research team, who will go and conduct actual interview studies with our users, being mindful to samples, making sure that we've got good representation and that we're hearing from a lot of different people doing different things, and ensuring that all of our tech is supporting that, but particularly with our solution that we've partnered on together, we absolutely care to hear the feedback. And one of the most important improvements we made together was from user feedback very early on in pilot, and working on that together with that feedback, saying, hey, we think this is going to be really critical to continued user adoption and making sure that folks are engaging with it. Let's see what we can do together. And your team was able to reduce the time in one of the processes of writing back to the chart, which was great. And that feedback allowed us to grow and scale the product and has made a lot of users super happy. So we take user feedback very seriously, and we make sure to incorporate it always throughout our software development and our product development processes.
Yeah, that's a really good segue into a question I had about what lessons we learned early on in deploying the technology at the practices, and how did we kind of pivot or shift?
That was a big standout that I can recall off the cuff, from user feedback. And I know we've provided some feedback just along the way operationally on maybe how we could improve. So I think there's other areas, not necessarily user driven, but still customer oriented, but you're like B2B customer, where we provided some feedback and said, hey, we might need some better communication here, or let's get some tracking in place there, or maybe can we see these insights that your team's really been able to turn around pretty quickly, that has been meaningful for us in order to understand the progress we're making, the success we're making, and where there's opportunities to do better too.
Yeah, communication is key, right? In all relationships.
Absolutely.
So Kate, I've noticed that Aledade, I feel like we've talked about this before. Aledade is an organization who likes to test multiple things at once. You really like to run tests.
Yeah.
I'd like to hear, I guess, your perspective on that and how the organization thinks about that. Like how you make the decision about what to test, and then how you assess, okay, this works and this didn't work.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great question. Well, it's part of our core values, being evidence-based, being data-driven, being curious. We're not afraid to fail. And if we're going to, we'd prefer to fail fast. So I think we're open to that testing mentality. We often derive hypotheses that lead to what we might test or what we decide not to test, on the basis of several considerations. We'll look at data, we'll churn through our own data and analyze it and find some insights or early signals that might tell us that one particular solution or process or product would be helpful or useful, might drive engagement, might improve performance, might lead to better patient outcomes. We stay really close into various white papers and different developments that are happening out in the industry. We even will look at what, is good and successful for our fellow travelers and see, is there anything there that we might be able to learn from, improve upon, and implement here for our practices. I don't think we ever come to the table believing that we're the best, brightest in the space. We feel really good about what we do and we're really confident. But again, we always know that there's opportunity to do better and to learn. And we're curious and excited to go through what data is available, run all sorts of analyses, look at what's out there in the industry, what's out there in terms of research and white papers, and draw conclusions from that and find what might be something new to trial and test in front of our practices. We are really mindful not to introduce a unnecessary amount of disruption. So when we do test, we try to find a good sample that would provide us some confident data, or at least give us some signal that this is moving in the right direction, or the product is maybe not moving in the right direction and isn't something we want to pursue further. But we've got some great partner practices, and some amazing field team members that match us up with the right folks who are interested in testing something along with us. A lot of our practices and practitioners are super curious and are wanting to find something new and better for their work life and for their patients too. So it's a great relationship we have with our practices in both wanting to do better and not just stay stuck in the same workflows and in the same systems.
Yeah, so that's an interesting point. Do you feel like that's something you look for in a partner practice, like willingness to try new solutions, to be open to new technology? I can imagine there's probably a balance of, they're always being asked to, we don't want to overburden the practices, right? Because they have so much on their plate already. So I think it can be tricky to strike the right balance of let's test something new and see if it works, but also I don't want you to feel like we're asking you to do too much. So
Yeah.
how do you kind of think about that?
I don't know if it's something that we would say, like we look for particularly in a practice, but I do think we are pretty candid about our interest in wanting to improve, wanting to be the best at getting better, and being curious and data driven, and all in the name of value-based care, all in the name of reducing costs, all in the name of improving care with patients. So when we encounter, a potential new practice, and we find that they share that same spirit, we're aligned in our goals, and we want to continue making the relationship between patients and their primary care physician strong, or improve that relationship. And our end game is to improve the care that we're giving to our patients, making them healthier, reducing the cost out there. Then it feels pretty aligned, that we're sharing the same end goal, and that both Aledade and the practice would probably do a lot to get there.
Awesome. All right. Want to shift to a fun little lightning round of questions now.
Okay.
First question being, what is something that you're focused on right now? Anything from the industry that you can share without giving away the secret sauce. So for example, I know you went to HIMSS the other week. Was there anything that really excited you, or that you felt like, oh, I can't wait to get back to work and start working on this?
Yeah, maybe not anything, formally on roadmap, but something that I work on is just understanding what's out there. You get stuck, I think, doing your focus work and sitting in an office in front of a computer. What I loved about HIMSS and what I love about those opportunities is just being able to see so many other organizations in this industry that are trying to solve similar problems and are doing it in different ways and are being creative. And it just really gets those creative juices flowing. So being in the point of care space and focused on tools here at Aledade that service the point of care, I'm always looking to think about how we can meet our practitioners and get the right data out in front of them in ways that are meaningful and easy. So that's something that I work on myself to feed into the creative work that I do in my everyday job as a product manager.
Yeah, awesome. what is an industry buzzword that you are hearing everywhere that makes sense, or a buzzword that you never want to hear again?
I'm gonna say both. It's both things. It's something that I hear all the time that makes sense, but it's kind of something that I'm maybe growing a little tired of hearing. Artificial intelligence and machine learning, I think, are both buzzwords, maybe not healthcare oriented. It makes so
More
much sense.
so now than ever.
I know. And it does make a lot of sense. I see the benefit, I see the opportunity, but I think I'm just tired of that being the go-to and the buzzwords that so many people are sharing. So yeah, definitely the buzzword, something that I think makes a lot of sense, but maybe let's find something else. Let's find the next thing.
Fair enough. Fair enough. What would you tell someone who wanted to work at Aledade?
What would I tell someone who wanted to work at Aledade? Oh my goodness. Well, like, come do it. That would be
Look
like
at
the
you.
first,
You're
right?
like the recruiting coordinator over here.
Yes, please, you should. But I think that's what I would say is absolutely come. It's fantastic. It's been a great experience. Not only are the folks that I work with and like cross product, cross team, the folks that I work with are just so excited and passionate about the work that we do, that we're so goal oriented. It's just such a pleasure to come into work knowing that you have this full team of support. The culture is amazing and tremendous, and just, I don't want to say sensitive because that maybe come off incorrectly, but I think the word would be considerate, just super considerate. And it makes focusing on your work so much easier when you just have real peace of mind and real trust with the group around you. It's a really nice place to work. People care about each other, they care about their team members. We want everyone to be their best selves and show up and feel safe every day and be able to do amazing work, and we're all motivated to do it. It's a really wonderful place. I know sometimes we're called a unicorn out in the world, and it's true. Aledade is like a unicorn.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining today. And it's been a pleasure talking to you.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, and always love our time together.